everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Figure out what the actual title is, but that's what I'm going with for now. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter at Hawk Blogger. And folks, there's this thing called the NFL Draft happening April 25th through the 27th. And today, what's today? Today is Monday, March 25th. So from now until the NFL Draft, I am planning to go live every single day. Well, we'll see about weekends, but probably on weekends as well, to talk about the Seahawks, to focus on the NFL Draft and particular position groups and particular players. If possible, we'll bring on some guests where time allows, although my schedule is probably a lot more flexible than some of the people I'll try to bring on. So we'll see how it goes. But I know that there are a lot of folks that cannot get enough Seahawks talk. So that is what we're here for. I certainly can't. And so even if it's just me talking to myself, I'm going to do this because I've just been too excited to let this go 1 week at a time. I see folks in the chat. Good morning to Jordan and Alan and Jackson. And Blue Tough Guy, everybody joining the show. Good morning. Hope you all are ready for a great week ahead. I hope the show is either helping you on your commute, on a walk, a jog, or just hanging out, getting ready for the day. So I Good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 365 of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. And yes, we've done it. We've done it. 365 straight days of Seahawks content. I'm so happy to be with all of you this morning on a Tuesday morning, March 25th, as the case may be. And as you heard back then, little did I expect that this would last this long, that there'd be so many of you that would join me for the journey. And we've got a fun show today. We've got some guests who I will allow to be revealed as they jump on the show. To celebrate, we will obviously talk Seahawks because we will do that on every one of these shows. And we've got some stuff to give away as well. So a lot of good stuff for all of you today. And I just really want to start by thanking all of you for being along for this ride. And, I think as you heard on that first episode, it certainly was not something that I expected to be what it's become. And I certainly didn't expect it to turn into something that resulted in credentials with the Seahawks and traveling with the team. In fact, I took the time this weekend to write up an article that I'll be publishing probably today or tomorrow, just kind of recapping the past year and the craziness of this year and the kind of midlife career change that, I've been experiencing. And I know a lot of people have experimented with themselves and just kind of sharing that experience. So I'll share that article. Hopefully you guys will enjoy that as well. I'll make sure to publish it in all the places in a bit. And we have some nostalgia in store here for sure. But one of the things I want to just say right off the top is there was I think a comment that made me laugh a few weeks ago, and it was someone that says like, kind of enough with the consecutive day thing. Like, we get it. You kind of sound like this other Seahawks content creator that brags about writing an article every day for 5 years or whatever, and enough already. It wasn't the most nicely worded comment, but I also get it. It's not really like, it's not about me, and it's not about this streak. In fact, the first thing I'm going to announce is this is not going to be a streak that I continue. I don't know when. It might even be tomorrow, just ceremoniously. But I will not do this show every single day till the end of time. Like, I just won't. That's not the plan. I will do this show pretty much every day. But there will be days I'll go on vacation and probably won't have content ready for you all. And there might be days where I'm sick and don't think I can do a show. But generally speaking, I think what separates this show, or I hope what separates this show, besides the content itself, is that you can kind of count on it being there whenever you want fresh content. And, I love the fact that this is daily. It's actually really helpful for me. I don't have a boss. I don't have a company that's expecting me to do something. Every single day, I could just choose to take a hike or, watch TV or do whatever I wanted to do. But having this kind of expectation of a show every day is helpful for me. So I like it. I'm going to try to keep it up, but I am not a slave to this streak. And I'm not, from this day forward, my plan is I'm not going to actually number the episodes. At least I'm not going to talk about the episode number. I'm not going to put it in the description of the videos. It'll just be. So we're going to keep this rolling. It's going to be tons of great stuff going forward. We're going to have a lot of fun with it. And you guys are a huge, huge part of all of that. So I just can't wait any longer to do some of the fun stuff. So I want to play something that I know everybody here has been dying to hear it's been like months, I feel like. So without further ado.
Time to rise and shine, it's clear. HB Morning's voicemail's here. Play and laugh, let go of fear. Start your day with cheer, my dear.
You've been dying to hear that jingle for a while. I know you have. And we've got a bunch of great voicemails. We got a few, I should say, not a bunch, but I'm going to play a few voicemails from all over the place. And we're going to start with Alan Bond, who I think actually might have been the Alan I was referring to in chat that I was saying good morning to in episode 1. Here's Alan.
Hey Brian, congratulations on 365 days to you and the rest of the Hawk Blogger Morning crew. The level of coverage we've received from you and the rest of the gang throughout this last year has been incredible. Outside of that, thank you for being a great ambassador for the Seahawks community. I know I personally leaned on some of your advice as I traveled this year to my first Seahawks game. Thanks to the moderators for working hard to keep the chat a safe spot. I look forward to another 365 days of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Go Hawks.
I think Alan nailed it there. Our moderators are amazing. So detail-oriented, old school Seahawk, Amy Holmes, and on down the list. We've had some really, really helpful folks in chat. Smokehawk, I think, has been a moderator as well. So a lot of great folks that have been supportive there. And I think one of the things that sets this kind of community apart is we really try to keep it about Seahawks football on topic, and we try to keep it friendly and kind. And, it gets heated every now and then, and we can disagree, but I think we all treat each other pretty well. This one comes from Boca Hawk.
Hey, Brian, congratulations on your 1-year anniversary. You've gone above and beyond building this community of diehard Seahawk fans from around the world. Thank you to you, Heather, your son, and even Finn for allowing you to do this full time. I started listening regularly last June when I was recovering from a total knee replacement, and I'll tell you, the podcast made it much more manageable, keeping me entertained and informed. Looking forward to an exciting and unpredictable season ahead. Best to you, Boca Hawk.
I think that was really cool to hear, and I will say he is not alone. I've heard from a number of folks who, use the podcast to kind of keeps them company on whatever they're going through, and that's nice. I like knowing that. That was part of the goal here, and you can't help but kind of get familiar with people after you spend this much time together and you share this kind of passion for a football team. So, a couple more, and thank you for Boca Hawk. Here's one from Shane.
Hey, Brian. In your draft coverage, you've talked a lot about versatility for players like JJ Pegues, Willie Lampkin, Tyler Warren. The question to you, is there anyone in this draft class that stands out in terms of what they can contribute on special teams? Looking, of course, outside of the typical specialists. Thanks.
This is actually a great question from Shane, and I think it's going to spark me to do some more research. And I wouldn't say dedicate a full episode to it, but I am really curious about returners, especially because the Seahawks had a disastrous season with returns last year. They maybe River Craycraft, who they signed recently, they'll look at as a returner. I think they probably would like to see some other guys enter that mix. Jalen Knoll, who, by the way, will be a guest for us this coming Friday, the wide receiver. Jalen Knoll will be on the show, so keep an eye out for that. There might be some guys like that they're looking at in addition to just being receivers or other players, other positions also being returners. I think that there's also a really real chance that this could be the year the Seahawks draft a kicker. I think it's possible. I know that they've met with at least one and maybe two kickers over the course of the pre-draft process. And Jason Myers is expensive. So it wouldn't be crazy to me that they are looking at, the first draft pick on a specialist since Michael Dixon back in the day. So I think it's a good question, and I'll answer it a little bit later in another episode. So thanks for submitting it.
Hi, Brian. Hi, Hawk Blogger fans. Here's Anton, and big greetings from Germany. First of all, I want to excuse myself for poor language. If somebody doesn't understand my words, I'm sorry. But yeah, man, Brian, I just want to congratulate you and tell you that I love every episode from you. It's one of my favorite things to do after work. I play football myself, or played football myself in the European League of Football. Yes, European guys play football too. A matter of fact, I played against Kevontae Turpin, so maybe you know him. But yeah, man, I just love listening to your show. Just the way you speak about things and don't just jump on the hype train and on the bandwagon and put your own opinion. So, man, I just love the show. I haven't been a viewer for a long time, but since I've started, I watched like almost every show every day. For you guys, it's in the morning. For us, it's maybe late at night or after work. But man, I appreciate you and just keep going. And congrats to the 17,000 if you break them until then. But yeah, man, nothing but best, and just keep the grind up. Bye.
That's cool. That's cool. I've heard from a number of folks, all around the world, and there's a lot of things that people rightfully are upset about at any given time on this planet, and I think one of the things that is just striking to me is what we're all doing at this specific moment in this specific show just wouldn't have been possible probably even 10 years ago, probably 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. And to connect folks like this who have this common passion from around the world is special. It's a special thing to be able to do. So I appreciate the voicemails. There was more. Apologies if I didn't get a chance to play, but I picked a few that I loved, and thank you for taking the time to send those in to me. If you ever want to send me a voicemail, it doesn't just have to be for this show. All you got to do is record a voice memo on your phone, attach it to an email, send it to me at brian@hawkblogger.com, and I will play it on a show down the line. So you can ask questions to me, you can make jokes, whatever's on your mind. Potentially ask questions of guests, depending on which show it's going to go on. All right. So I told you there'd be some stuff for all of you, because this is a celebration for us together. There's a lot. And so the first thing I want to do is tell you some numbers, and I'm going to ask you to remember these, because that's going to be your key to unlocking some prizes. So I want people to take a quick guess. How many people watched Hawk Blogger Mornings, Real Hawk Talk, all that content? How many people watched? It's not about listens, but just watched over the last 365 days. Give me some guesses in chat. Where are you guys at on how many people have watched the show over the last 365 days? We got a guess of 3 million. That's a good guess. Got a guess of 6 million, 1.7 million, 565,000, 10,000, 287,000, 12 million. That would be fun. Not quite. All good guesses. The correct answer is almost 6 million people. Almost 6 million people have watched the show in the last year, which is mind-boggling considering where we started. As far as how many times this show has been watched, not by individuals, but just watched in general, over 15 million times. Over 15 million times in the last 365 days. And for what it's worth, this month of March, the biggest month so far. Over 1 million views on YouTube alone just in March. First time I've hit 1 million views in a month. And you'd think it's all the DeMarcus Lawrence stuff, but that's like a fraction of what it was. It's just all the Seahawks news, all the live shows, all the free agent, 8-hour marathon, all that stuff was a record-breaking month. So I love that, people love the offseason the way I love the offseason. You can't lose in the offseason, really, and at least you can't lose a game. And I think there's been a lot of stuff going on, so a lot of stuff for us to kind of share together. So those are some numbers to keep in mind. I want to ask you all a question related to one of our sponsors. And the first 10 people that answer this correctly are going to get a $25 gift card to Pagliacci Pizza. So the question is, all right, are you ready? The question is, what are the toppings on a 12th man primo? What are the toppings on a 12th man primo? I'm going to give you a few minutes to answer, and I am then going to put a link into chat where you can sign up to actually get these gift cards for Pagliacci Pizza. Now, you do have to be in the Seattle area to benefit from this. I'm going to give you a little bit of a clue. It does have pepperoni on it, and it does have Mama's Little Peppers on it. But this is an easily knowable one. And look at detail oriented. He's nailing it. He's got it. All you got to do is Google search, baby, and it's right there for you. So what we're going to do, thank you to Pagliacci Pizza for their support. Give me one more answer before I give you this link. who was the guest that Pagliacci Pizza? Who was the guest that Pagliacci Pizza sponsored on Mondays during the season? Who was the guest that Pagliacci Pizza sponsored on Mondays during the season? Let me know. Put it in chat. Robert Mays. Yes, you guys got it. You nailed it. You nailed it. All right. So this is the link to sign up, and it's going to be the first 10 folks who got these questions right are going to get a Pagliacci Pizza $25 gift card. Hopefully that is working. I had a lot of things I was trying to get ready for the show today. And this was one of them. So hopefully that is working for all of you. And let me just double check. I'll see if there's answers coming in to that form. Let's see. So far, 0 responses. Oh, we got a response. Okay, so it's working. Awesome. So you do have to be in the Seattle area to get these. You will, mailing address. We will work this out to get these out to you. But huge thank you to Pagliacci Pizza. I think the conversations with Robert Mays were some of the best, most informative, most fun things we did over the course of this year. We've got our first guests coming up here in 8 minutes. 7:30, we will welcome in some guests, so keep an eye out for that. We'll talk Seahawks with them very soon. Now, a little bit later in the show, we have got a giveaway for JK Boots, and for that giveaway, you're gonna wanna remember what we talked about in terms of the numbers to start this show about views and viewers. And we will have, let's see, I think we've got about 20 different pieces of swag to give out to people. Again, in this case, you have to live in the continental US. So, cost of shipping is a little crazy when it starts getting beyond that. But we are going to have a bunch of stuff here to give away. We've got a leather wallet. We've got 5 leather wallets. We've got a hat, actually, that is one of these guys. We're going to have 5 of those that we're going to give away. We're going to give away a JK Boots hoodie, 5 of those, and 5 JK Boots t-shirts. So 20 people will get some awesome giveaways from JK Boots. It is a good reminder, a very good reminder, that head on over to jkboots.com. We are running a really cool promo that we just started a few days ago. If you use code HawkBlogger at jkboots.com, you get $75 off. $75, that's a lot of money. And every purchase with code HawkBlogger also results in $15 being donated to the Wildland Firefighters Foundation, protects Northwest forests from forest fires, supports our forest firefighters, and we've done a bunch with them already, and this is just a great way to keep that going. So use code HawkBlogger over at jkboots.com. Get yourself the best pair of boots you're ever going to own. Washington company based in Spokane, family owned. Really great. Been partnering with them for a while, and you guys have loved it. I've heard a lot of stuff from you guys about it, but this is as good of a deal as I think we've seen. So $75 off if you use code HawkBlogger, plus $15 to the Wildland Firefighters Foundation. So before I get our first set of guests on, there is a little bit of Seahawks news. The Seahawks signed tight end Eric Saubert. I don't even know if I'm coming close to pronouncing that name correctly, because, I keep wanting to put an R in there. It's just Saubert, Saubert. He is 31 years old. He's 6'5", 250. He's essentially a blocking tight end. And he played for the 49ers last year, but keep in mind, the 49ers run a very similar offense to what Clint Kubiak runs up here in Seattle. And if you rewind a little bit, he has played with Clint Kubiak, or at least Clint Kubiak has familiarity with him. I'm guessing some of the other Seahawks coaches also have some familiarity with him when he was back in Denver playing for the Broncos in 2021 and 2022. He has had some really excellent years as a blocker. He's not been so excellent the last few years as a blocker. So I'll be really interested to see if he can be a step up from Pharaoh Brown. It really shouldn't be hard to find a good blocking tight end, but it's been harder than you'd like it to be for the Seahawks. I think AJ Barner is a complete tight end. He can do that. Mike McDonald told me that Noah Fant is as well. I don't see it that way, but Mike McDonald certainly knows a lot more about football than I do. And Pharaoh Brown was supposed to be the best blocking tight end in the NFL, and he was not great last year. He was hurt, but he just wasn't great. So we'll see if Mr. Sauber is a better fit in that regard. I would not say that this means they've met their need at tight end and they don't need to draft anyone else. But I do think it reduces their dependency on drafting, the Jackson Haas or some of these pure blocking tight ends in the draft. They don't have to necessarily do that. They can just kind of catch as catch can at the tight end position. I still think they need to add an additional tight end because Noah Fant is on the last year of his deal. And I think there's some really good tight ends in this class. And so I think that they should really be looking for that coming in a few weeks. All right, next announcement that I wanted to share. We'll do this just before our guests join here in a few minutes. Uh-oh. We've got a guest with a problem getting on. Let me help this person really quick. Before I do, I'm going to paste this link into chat. We have got, for the first time, I have put together a bunch of different swag items for Real Hawk Talk, for HB Mornings, and why is this not working? That is not the right link. That's why. Okay. Copy. There we go. All right. Over at Redbubble. So I have cut the prices for everything on Hawk Blogger Morning swag, Real Hawk Talk swag. So you can get shirts, you can get hoodies, you can get all sorts of stuff. People have asked for this before. You can go over there and get anything you want. Now, I will admit that I think Redbubble's also running an additional discount right now. So you can get some better deals even than that. But, oh my goodness. I think I messed up for my guests. Hold on a second. Oh my gosh. This is a good example. I gave you guys the wrong link. Okay, let me send a quick note to my guests to give them the right link to join. I love it when I make mistakes like this. And let me update for my other guests. You might have done this 365 days, but you still make mistakes. Dave, well, I'll give you a little bit of a clue there. Okay. Just sent the right link. Anyway, so getting back, you can go into Redbubble, get whatever swag you want. I've made it as cheap as I can possibly make it, and there's also additional discounts. So, without further ado, let's bring on our first guest of episode 365. This is somebody who, was maybe my number one get from my perspective. The guy that I spent many years watching, and his partner, who he spent many years learning from. Two of the best to ever do it, covering the Seahawks, covering sports, just writing and doing journalism in general. Let me welcome Mike Sando and Dave Boling to the show. Fellas, thank you so much for taking time out of your early Tuesday to come on and hang out for a little bit.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
Well,
Good to see you, Mike. Been a while.
Yeah, good to see you. Dave's been on the road,
what's Dave been doing?
Covering Zags, Gonzaga basketball.
I see how it is. So you cover the Zags on the road, but the Seahawks aren't worth your travel.
For the people I work for.
I see. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Good save.
Work. Spokane Paper has me
He's
doing
retired.
columns on Seahawks and Zags when they get to the tournament, particularly. And man, I don't know how many people realize 26 straight NCAA tournament appearances. They were going for their 10th straight Sweet 16 for a place that was below mid-major. They don't even, they didn't have a ranking for them where they started. It's really one of the great sports stories. In a lot of ways, it's undercovered, I believe.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
Kelvin Sampson, good for him. Really giving it to the reporter about Gonzaga.
Zaga. After all these years, and that's Billa said, geez, they've been kicking people's asses for 20 years. Say their name right,
Well,
so it's a great story. And you know what? And it's in a bigger context, kind of what sports is about and what franchises aim for, making the most of what you've got and sustaining it. They kept the staff. They had a plan, a way that they operated, and they had good administrative help and a staff that their retention of quality people was ridiculous. And I think that, in some way, that's how you build an NFL franchise. That's how you build any college franchise.
It's true.
To be successful in the long run.
Mike, do you have a dog in the hunt for college basketball? You have a team?
Not really.
Whitworth made it, didn't they?
Well, I went to Whitworth and I was sat on the bench for a couple of years on the basketball team there. So
that's something.
But I do remember going. This is over 30 years ago, but I do remember then working in Spokane and going to Gonzaga games when they kind of were Gonzaga. When they really didn't edit. It was after John Stockton, obviously, but it was before they were good and competitive. It was before they were national, and so it was fun to go watch them. Then I did enjoy. I went to their games, and they were a good WCC team, right, Dave? And then they became a lot more than that. So,
and they did it. They did it by finding talents that were overlooked, or maybe their careers retarded a little bit by injury, what have you. And then coaching the hell out of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because that's the best guys they could get. And they really stressed, you got a chip on your shoulder, pal. And if you don't, you should have, because nobody wanted you. And they reminded them of that every day in practice. And they really had some, the guys who run through walls.
It's a special streak that they've got going, and sorry to see them get knocked out. But they certainly have done themselves proud over the years. Mike, good to see you. Last time I saw you, you were towing like a couple $100 worth of popcorn back to Seattle, if I remember correctly.
Last bowl was consumed last night. So in Indianapolis, there's a great popcorn place called Just Pop In, and this goes back to a Super Bowl 20 years ago. When the Super Bowl was in Houston, I think it was in Houston, that it was going to be coming to Indy. They had some people from Indy there, merchants, like giving away samples of their food, and I tried this cheesy popcorn. I thought, God, that is the best. I can't believe how good this is. And so Now, when I go to the combine, after sharing that with my wife, like I can't come home without a couple bags of this stuff. It's super expensive. Like it's way more than you would ever pay for
Yeah.
popcorn, believe me. But it's a novelty thing every year, and it is really good. So if anybody wants an expensive gift that is actually, uh, I think, an elite level, that cheesy popcorn there, I get a little bit of the caramel corn mixed in, just a little bit, but it's a
Interesting. I don't
nice
know about
treat.
caramel
Yeah.
and cheese mixed together, but the rest of it's the rest of
Yeah,
it sounds great.
That's Rickenbacker
Yeah,
territory, isn't
Chicago.
it?
Well, it's Chicago. It's like if you go to
Indiana.
Chicago, they'll have a Chicago mix, and that's the cheesy with the caramel, and that they call it the Indy mix there. So it's really good,
Well,
sweet and savory.
Mike, I gotta thank you because you kind of had encouraged me on the combine to go. I wasn't sure I wanted to go. I talked to Brady
Hmm.
Henderson and he's like, "Ah, man, it's a mess there. There's so many people," and he likes going to the
Hmm.
owners meeting. And I was like, the combine was fantastic. Loved the combine. It was so much more out of it than I would have ever expected. And
Oh, good.
now Sunday, I'm heading to the owners meeting.
You
So
are going to
for
do it.
I
Okay.
am gonna do it. I am gonna do it. I owe it to my wife for allowing me to make another trip cross country, but I'm only gonna be there for a couple of days. For you guys both, but I'll start with Mike. What's the annual meeting like? What's the goal when you go to the annual meeting? What are you trying to learn when you get there?
For me, these are all just places to meet people that I don't know that I want to know. I mean, how many places can you go where every owner, team president, salary cap person, usually a head coach, and their general manager and their families are all there in a relaxed setting. So it's very different. The combine's a little bit more faster tempo. You know, this is you're going to have people and their families out at the pool, or there's going to be a social event one night where you're in there, with everybody, and there's food and drink, and so for me, it's all about the maintaining existing relationships, developing new ones. That's really what the combine's about. It's just a different setting at the combine. And I understand what Brady's talking about because when you are covering a team specifically, there are certain probably things you have to do to kind of justify the trip, or you've got to write about who they might draft. And so it is that is a frenetic setting. This one's not at all. The league meetings is extremely laid back. And, if you're not careful, like there's not a lot that just comes to you automatically there, unless you're covering like the league rules changing. Then they're going to come and have a press conference. But to me, that competition committee talking, that's not enough reason, you know, to justify the trip. You've got to, uh, be able to meet with some people, have some lunches, have some impromptu bump intos, and talk about whatever. But some things I may be working on, too.
Am I gonna have to wear a suit to this
No.
big dinner?
Oh no, no. The dinner is actually going to be outside, and you're not even going to. You may sit down. They'll have some couches and stuff, but it's a lot of standing at some elevated tables. You should have a sport coat and not a tie.
Okay. All right.
Probably a sport coat and be fine. But in the resort itself, the little hotel, you're going to have. They're going to say it's resort casual, but you don't want to look like. At least I don't want to look like the guy staying at the airport hotel, even if I am staying at the airport hotel.
Yeah. I hear you.
The importance of access can't be you can't overstate how important
Yeah.
that is. And Mike's career, in some sense, his capacity to network and develop sources, probably through activities like that,
Yeah.
is really second to none. And I think that was the Clayton DNA that was passed down to Mike, and that kind of access is so valuable. And you learn things you'll never know you'll need, but
Yeah.
or get a phone number or something when you're on a deadline, you're on a story. Having that time with people, irreplaceable for a reporter.
Yeah. I used to just follow John around when I was first starting out because I get introduced to everybody.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Maybe I'll have to do that with other people this time. That sounds like a good
Follow
idea.
Sando.
Follow Sando. Yeah,
I heard
I'll
the
just
GMs line up to talk to him. Where's my quarterback going to fit in the tiers this year?
Speaking of which, that's a good segue. I only have you guys for a little bit more time, but last time I talked to you both, the Seahawks were a very different team, and
Yeah. Yeah.
they've moved on from Geno Smith. They've moved on from DK Metcalf. They've signed Sam Darnold. They brought in Cooper Kupp. But there's something specific I wanted to talk to both of you about that kind of stuck out to me. I want to hear about your thoughts on the moves as well. But John Schneider's been very public and clear that this was not their plan, that this was not their intention. He did not couch this as, well, we decided this was the right thing to do. It was Geno Smith did not return our calls, did not counter. We made an offer. We wanted DK Metcalf here. We want people that want to be here. There were some hard feelings, and John Schneider let that be known. That felt unique to me. Normally, GMs are spinning and protecting their own reputations about things going the way they wanted them to go. So, Dave, I want to start with you on this.
I think this is a real indicator of how Seahawks life is with John Schneider as the GM without Pete Carroll weighing in. There is an XY axis of cost versus the trajectory of production that a GM will look at that closer than a coach does. When he sees the trajectory of production, he is always going to stand behind a player who helped him win games in the past. This is how Chuck Knox basically allowed a franchise to slip away. I'm sure there were times in the past where maybe Pete and John did not have the same view of, let's say, a Russell Wilson. When should we get rid of it? And if you don't have that cold, sanguine view of not this guy who was your dear friend and who won you games, what is he worth? If you don't have that, your franchise can slip pretty quickly if one of these guys go down. When I saw Geno, I thought Geno had some years left in him. Might be a good, way to transition to the future. For the kind of money they're talking about, I understand that. DK had some pluses and minuses that were changed the calculus with the production and cost too. And yeah. I think, and it's a living thing. It's always changing. You can't make a deal on your own. And if they don't want to be there, then you're better to cut bait now than have somebody who's disaffected and costing you money too. And, yeah, if you try to make a judgment midway through, you're not getting the full picture. There's a lot more time to add pieces. And I'm always cautious to start making judgments before they may pick up somebody, the last cut free agent, something like that.
These two players, though, are somewhat success stories of the organization, and I think we've seen that John Schneider's never afraid to make moves and move on. At any point along the way, and so you'll wonder is Mike Macdonald going to be the type to develop relationships with certain guys that he brought in, and then will that dynamic be a little bit different? Maybe not to the level it was with Pete, where he's such a people person. It's so much about the relationships. That's such a huge component of his coaching, probably more than it is for other guys. At this time right now, Mike Macdonald's new, so he's not as invested at all in these guys that they're moving on from. But how does that change over time as they bring in some guys that are his success stories? That will be interesting to me. But if you were to get rid of your starting quarterback and what people on the outside would think is your number one receiver, even if we know, they have somebody else, is big. Who else did that this year? Who did that?
Who else does that any year?
Yeah. Who else gets rid of probably objectively, just look at the quarterback tiers, a top 15-ish quarterback, right? He's in the top 15 or 20, and a perceived number one receiver with definite number one body type receiver. That's unusual to do.
It's very unusual. And I also, one of the things that stuck out to me is Mike Macdonald is new, and this is his first offseason with the team. And he was out and public and very emphatic that Geno Smith was the quarterback. that it's silly to even talk about it. And I do wonder if part of why John Schneider was as open about how that went was to protect his coach, who he kind of maybe hung out to dry a little bit, by
Yeah.
having him out there with that perspective.
The other thing I was curious about is, did they not know, the degree to which Gino was unhappy after, I presumably last year when Gino wanted a new deal and they wouldn't talk to him? Or, was this, to what degree was this not a surprise at all for them?
It's a really fascinating situation in that you can, to Dave, to your point, Pete Carroll would have, like, there's no chance a Pete Carroll organization wouldn't have known exactly where these guys were and how likely, and maybe even be able to talk them through whatever they needed to. But the John Schneider organization and Mike McDonald, I don't know that that's their hallmark.
A big part of this, too, is the agent. You're dealing with this. What are they doing behind the scene? Players are big kids. They're not businessmen. They get their feelings hurt. They're driven by ego. They're pushed by that. They're motivated. And part of it is, how much money do I get relative to somebody else? They're obviously, in 100% of the cases, thinking they deserve more. And Mike can fill you in on this, but one of the great blunders, which really wasn't intentional, was with Steve Hutchinson. Hutch was, what they give him,
transition tag, yeah.
Transition tag rather
pill.
than the franchise tag. And my understanding is they just didn't do a good enough job convincing Hutch how much they loved him. This is just what I've heard about over the years. The lore of it was he felt personally insulted by his offer. He probably would have stayed. I don't know what would have happened had they done a better. They did not do a good enough job expressing their love and devotion to Steve Hutchinson. And and then the agent, whatever, worked the poison pill thing so that they couldn't do it. And that was interpersonal coaching. You've got to relate to these players and you got to sell them. And you got to realize, too, a lot of them are pretty fragile in some ways. It's that ego plays into it. And you need a staff psychologist or something, a relationship counselor on staff to work with these people, I think, because they're not always dealing from a business foundation.
But that's hard. That's easy. They do have those types of people for your emotional health, but to weave in the financial component of that and what we think you're worth and all of that, that's a different thing, I think. And I think for some, from a business standpoint, the organization has a number for guys, that you're willing to go to. And for what my perception of what happened with Gino was that once they said they weren't going to talk to him last year, then he would stay here, but the number went up, right? He's only going to do it if they really show him and go high here. So they weren't going to do that. And so they didn't. And they had no problem getting, younger and cheaper at the position with Sam Darnold, even though there's a little bit of uncertainty with that. I think Gino's more established.
That's a key point. And I'm going to get you guys out of here in just a minute because I know Dave's got some places to be. But they could, let's say for a second that, to Dave's point, that they were surprised. Let's say that they didn't see this coming. And there's some indications that they didn't, or at least the degree of it.
Yeah.
They still could have then decided if they really wanted both of these guys here, there's probably a number that they could have put on the table that would have kept both of those guys here. They chose not to hit that number. I think especially with Gino, they chose not to hit that number. And so this isn't as clean as, oh, they got surprised and those guys forced their way out. It was also kind of to your point, Mike, that like there was a level that they were willing to go. And to your point, Dave, there wasn't a coach that had a strong enough tie to these guys to say, no, we got to go further. And so this is, I think, a pretty pivotal moment that if nothing else, has put John Schneider very much like in the crosshairs, more so than even last year when Pete Carroll had, been let go. It feels like this is the moment where if this doesn't go well, it's going to be a tough one for John Schneider to recover from.
Remember when Pete Carroll had his going away press conference and he said he didn't really say careful what you wish for, John Schneider, but it was kind of the tenor, wasn't it,
It's
Dave?
his turn now.
Yep. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Last thing I want to ask you guys, obviously the Seahawks offensive line, Dave, we always talk to you about offensive line. Yep, that face right there is with a face that everybody makes. They go
I get
after
that
Will
during the
Fries.
game. I'll watch and just go like this, and whoever's next to me, are you okay?
You're not alone. Yeah. So they have hired a new offensive coordinator. They've hired a new offensive line coach. They brought Rick Dennis in, who's been an offensive line coach. Justin Outen, who's an offensive line. They got 17 run game coordinators, and yet they cannot sign an offensive lineman. They've signed every other position on the roster this free agent class, but that
one, there's not enough of them to go around.
Yes.
So you've got to develop them, and you have to think. If you are counting on your staff and your scheme to upgrade the performance of individual players, I think that's a real slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
They got Cross, they got Lucas. I like Lucas if he can be healthy. I think that's a foundation. They got a young center. Maybe there's an upside there that he can develop. The guards, real questions. Again, you're going to have to see what you can find out there. So far, nothing's been done. Or very little. If they can get some people, they have to. And you can change your scheme and you can change your coaches. But boy, when you got somebody out there who has to block a real tough 3 technique, that's you can help guys in short term. You can fix some of the scheme to get help. If you're doing that every week, you can't run an offense that way.
Mike.
Josh Jones was the only one they've signed, right?
That's the only one they've signed. He's clearly a backup swing kind of guy. Mike, my last question for you is, John Schneider was also honest that they had an offer for Will Fries. They thought they had him, and then they decided they wanted a physical because he had a broken tibia that he was recovering from, and he decided to go to Minnesota, who didn't ask for a physical. Do you think John Schneider is going to regret that principle that he stood on to require a physical? Is that something that, in your talks with GMs around the league that are spending their owners' money, where do you think that falls?
I think you need to check out a guy physically. I do. I think that you can't sign somebody and then have some sort of an injury that you didn't account for. That being said, is that really the whole reason? If you're super high on a guy and willing to go to the next level and even take the price higher, the guy's going to probably come visit you if he wants to, right? If he wants to come there. So I think it's a little bit more. I think what we're seeing is they've been only willing to go so far with some of these offensive linemen that are available in free agency, and a lot of them are flawed. I mean, do you feel like Kansas City's for sure fixed their left tackle situation, signing a guy who was in San Francisco, right, that no one really knows a ton about? Mm-hmm. They won the press conference, right? They addressed it. In December, we could still be talking about their left tackle situation, right? But they tried. They did something. So I think it's not this one thing with Will Fries. To me, it's just a series of over the years, this being the way that it just goes on the offensive line. They rarely, if ever, seem to have a guy that they have to have and just go get him, because you can do that. That happens in free agency, and we can say it's an overpay, but people do address these positions, and they don't. They just. So to me, it's not the one thing with this one player. It's just cumulative at that position over many years. That's where the regret would be, I think.
Brian, you said, will John Schneider come to regret it? I don't know. Sam Darnold will come to regret it. Maybe pretty quickly and rather emphatically.
Yeah. Well said, Dave. Well, I'm going to thank you both for taking time out of your Tuesday to come on. I know, have heard from folks, hearing both of you together, learning from both of you, getting your perspectives is absolutely precious. I will not make you tell stories about each other this time, but we'll do that another time.
Yeah, it's a good thing they don't hear us talking over the phone or via text.
That's right.
We're working on that. We're working on that. So thank you both. Thanks to Mike. Mike? Do you have anything coming up that people should check out on The Athletic?
Yeah, some free agency stuff coming out next week, so check that out.
All right. And Dave, anything for you during the off
I
season?
got some of this egg follow up, and then we'll be looking toward the draft, but nothing
Awesome.
pressing.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you another time. That is Mike Sando and Dave Boling, two of the best in the biz. Been an absolute joy getting to talk to them this season, and hopefully we'll have them back this coming year as well. So great to have them. We are going to keep rolling here, and hopefully my next guest got the right link to join here in just a few minutes. We'll bring on our next guest, another one of my favorites over the course of this time. And over these 365 days, when I started, I really didn't know whether people would come on. I've had guests on Real Hawk Talk for years, and you kind of twist their arm and you get them in here, and it's great. We've had some amazing guests. But on a show that you're doing every day, like, how do you get people in the door? It's been fun, man. We've had some. I was going to try to do a compilation of some of the guest appearances, but man, I was too lazy. I did a bunch of other things though. So, but even like Eric McLean was a name that was one of my first guests and covers the ACC. And I loved that conversation. We talked about Graham Barton back then, and his play as a center and a five position flex kind of guy. And that was really impactful to me. And I went back and looked at Graham Barton more, and then we got his Raz score. We had Kentley Platty, the inventor of Raz, on the show, and talked about how Graham Barton's testing scores were similar to Steve Hutchinson's, and there's a lot of stuff that was great. So, and then even just recently getting to talk to Greg Cosell down at the Combine. And a bunch of other folks. I mean, the list just goes on and on. So Dane Brugler we're going to have back, but I think the guests are maybe one of my favorite parts of this experience, is just getting to know different people. And then, I get to see people when I go to the Senior Bowl or when I go to the Combine. Brandon Thorne, I've gotten to know pretty well, or better than I did for sure, as an offensive line guru. And we sat at the Senior Bowl and we watched 1v1 drills, and we talked about players. We talked about what he sees versus what I was seeing. And obviously he knows a lot more than I do, but those kinds of relationships just are opportunities to learn, opportunities to kind of make another connection in a world that I think is pretty isolating. And I hope that this show has given you all a chance to connect with others. That's a good reminder. If you haven't already, join as either a YouTube member or patreon.com/hawkblogger, and you can get access to our Discord channel where we got hundreds of folks in there talking all the time in between shows. It's great. You got to be club level or higher on YouTube to get in there. Any level on Patreon gets you in there. And with that, let's bring on one of our earlier guests on Hawk Blogger Mornings as we celebrate 365 straight days of this show. When I first brought him on, he was with a place called Pro Football Focus, PFF. He has since moved. He is with the 33rd team, and you know him as half of a dynamic duo. Let me bring on Sam Monson, the man, the myth, the legend. It's been a while since I've seen Sam. We were baking under the sun in the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. I think it's maybe the last time I saw you. Thanks for coming on, man. How are you doing this morning?
Anytime. I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing well. This is kind of a celebratory episode. We hit the 365 straight day mark today, going live every single day for 365 straight days, and you're part of the celebration. So congratulations on that.
I mean, congratulations to you. 365 days straight is pretty insane. So yeah, well done.
Well, you've had like the adventure this past year going from PFF to 33rd team, you and Steve, and I certainly try to catch as many of your episodes as possible, as you guys are kind of in draft grind mode. Like, I think when I caught you in Mobile, we were all just starting kind of kicking it off. What were the players that caught your attention in Mobile, and what are some players that maybe have caught your attention since?
Yeah, there were a few of them. It's funny, like I kind of imagine that this year, now that we're kind of off in a different place, we're not doing the PFF grind. I would be further ahead on draft stuff this year relative to previous years. And then just the way it went, I ended up sort of becoming basically the same kind of time scale, and if anything, a little bit later. And eventually I was like, you know what, we're going to the Senior Bowl this year. I'm not even going to bother like looking at anything yet before the Senior Bowl. I'm going to start watching practices with basically no idea who anybody is and just see who stands out and who jumps out. So yeah, there were a few people I think during the week that definitely jumped out. A lot of them are the same names, that everybody else brought up. Gray Zabel, the North Dakota State offensive lineman, arguably I think the best player at the entire week. Really impressive at three different positions. I mean, he's a college tackle. They're kicking him inside somewhere at the next level, but he played all three interior positions at various points during the week and was really good at all of them. I mean, he was bouncing between each position, consistently dominating, consistently getting the better of the defensive lineman, which is huge for him because number one, he's showing that he can play those interior positions that he's projecting at. Number two, show that he can do at with a step up in competition. North Dakota State going up a level, arguably a couple of levels to an all-star level. So really good week from him. Some of the wide receivers I thought jumped out as well. The Iowa State guys, both of them I thought were really impressive. Higgins and Knoll. Jaden Royals I thought was really impressive. The Utah State wide receiver. It's funny. Some guys just move slightly differently.
Mm-hmm.
Like one rep of seeing him, I was like, "Ooh, who's that guy?" And then after the second rep, I was like, "Okay, he's definitely good. Now I need to actually find out about him because like he jumped off." And then a few of the defensive linemen as well. Obviously, Mike Green had that amazing rep where he wrecked a guy and then just was like, "All right, that's all I need to show. I'm out of here now."
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Iowa State guys. We're actually going to be having Jalen Knowles going to be on the show on Friday, so we'll catch up with him. Jaden Higgins is a guy that I think has a lot of people's attention, at least in Seattle, after moving on from DK Metcalf. He seems to be an interesting fit at the X for probably not just the Seahawks, but a lot of teams. What did you like about him when you saw him at the Senior Bowl?
I mean, everything. He's just a really clean, kind of all-around prospect. He's good at everything. The numbers that he posted at the combine were kind of crazy for a guy his size. Like Tez Johnson was another guy that stood out at the Senior Bowl, completely opposite end of the spectrum, like 5'9", 155 pounds, like historically small wide receiver who went to the combine. Well, he's really quick. He's fast. And so he went to the combine and posted these kind of terrible running numbers. And what was most amazing to me about those is not necessarily how slow Tez Johnson's were, but like Higgins at vastly, 215 and 6'4", whatever he is, was posting faster numbers than Tez Johnson. And not just the 40, but the 10-yard splits. Like the quick numbers were the similar as well. So he's big, he's fast, he's got route running ability at that size. He's got good hands. Like he really is this all-round receiver that I think is just good at everything. I really liked his tape. I really liked his performance at the Senior Bowl. I mean, I think I don't see a good reason why he isn't a first-round wide receiver right now.
That's a statement. And one of the things that jumped out for me with Higgins at the Senior Bowl was actually his release. You don't see 6'4" guys show that kind of lateral agility and get off the press the way I thought he did at the Senior Bowl. On kind of the other end of the spectrum, as you said, Xavier Restrepo is a guy that I loved his film. I actually was like, this guy's a classic slot, Julian Edelman style slot receiver. He didn't seem to be as sudden as I expected him to be at the Senior Bowl. And then yesterday, I think it was yesterday, had a pretty disastrous 40 time at his pro day. I think the last time I saw it was like 4.83, something like that.
Yep.
What do you think that's going to do to his draft stock?
Well, first of all, I mean, if that was going to be the time, I don't know why anybody let him run. Like that's the kind of time that if that's what you're going to put out there, don't bother. Like let the unknown is better than a 4.83. If you hadn't run at all, people would have been saying, he might have run a 4.7, Like nobody would have been putting down 4.83 as the estimated 40 time if he hadn't run. So somebody screwed up huge in allowing him to do it in the first place. He was interesting because the first thing that jumped out when you see him in person at the Senior Bowl is he's not built like a wide receiver. He's built like a running back. He's 5'10", 210 pounds, effectively. 209, I think was what he measured at either the Senior Bowl or the Combine. That's running back size. Like his legs are like tree trunks. His thighs are huge. He is built like a running back. So from that point of view, he's a strange profile immediately before you get into his tape. And then the problem is that doesn't save him with the 40 time either. I mean, a 4.8 is terrible, whether you're a running back or a wide receiver. Either way, it's catastrophic. So he's this strange, and basically every, physical profile for him now is way, way, way below any kind of threshold that you're going to have. So if you care about physical benchmarks, Restrepo is probably off your board at this point. But his tape is incredibly productive. Now he's limited. He is a slot guy. Clearly with those sort of athletic limitations, you're not, going to have a wide encompassing role where he can play all these different positions. He is a slot guy. But if you need a slot receiver, if you don't have one, Restrepo can play like 4.8 or not. He can get open. He understands coverages. He's tough. Like he can run routes. He's not sudden. He's not fast. He's not, he doesn't have any of the physical benchmarks that you want. But if you do have a gap for that slot receiver in an offense, I think he can play at the NFL level. I was trying to think of other guys that's been true for where none of the physical benchmarks are there. And my mind went back to Devon Bess, from Miami, from the Miami Dolphins for a few years, who was part of that Hawaii offense with Colt Brennan. And then I looked up Devon Bess's 40 time, and it was like 4.6 something. It's like, so that was, a short, shifty, quick receiver, but even he ran 0.2 of a second faster than Restrepo.
Yeah. Well, there's some other guys that are at the receiver position, which for the Seahawks is a new position of interest after the move on from DK Metcalf. I think I saw Chris Simmons came out with his wide receiver rankings, and I think he had Kyle Williams from Washington State as number 2. He had him as essentially a day 1 first round pick level difference maker. What are your thoughts on Kyle Williams so far?
Yeah, I really like Kyle Williams. Mike Renner, formerly of PFF as well. He was on our show. He's really high on Kyle Williams as well. He was saying he didn't think he was going to find anybody higher than he is on Kyle Williams. And then Chris Sims comes along and puts him like number 2 overall in his rankings.
Yeah.
Look, I think he might be the best route runner in this class. I think he has the best feet in this class. His quickness is insane. You watch his Senior Bowl drills. Okay, the one-on-ones are kind of set up for receivers to win. It's a difficult assignment for a DB, but he looked like he was playing at a different speed than these other guys. Like there were releases, there were routes where he was running, and he was just absolutely destroying defensive backs. Like they were not operating on the same quickness level. You had to keep checking that these cornerbacks were actually cornerbacks, and it wasn't like a weird rep where they got him matched up with a safety or a linebacker. He was just destroying people. He's got speed as well. Like he can run away from people. He's not just a quick guy with releases and a technician. He's actually got the speed to scare people if he gets level with them or if he gets on top of them. I think he's got some limitations. Like physically, he's pretty slight. He's pretty small. There are times where, if a DB doesn't fall for everything he shows him at the line and just sort of stays in phase with him, he can kind of erase that guy by just, leaning on him. The cornerback can just lean on him and kind of take him out of his route, out of his pathway. He's pretty good at the catch point, but he's not going to physically overwhelm anybody. So I do like him a lot. I definitely would be in the Renner Sims category of higher on him than most people. I don't think I could push him all the way into the first round, but I would be fine taking him on day 2 sometime.
We're talking to Sam Monson of the 33rd Team. And Sam, when we first had you on last year, preparing for last year's draft, you were like, God, the Seahawks, they just need to draft an offensive lineman in the first round. For God's sakes, draft, Jackson Powers Johnson, draft somebody, right? And I was like, actually, I think they're going to go defensive line. That is my best guess. Well, I turned out to be right. That doesn't mean that was a good thing to do, because the Seahawks a year later they're in the exact same situation in terms of, oh my God, the interior of that offensive line has been a disaster. Now they're at pick 18 instead of pick 16. It's a different draft class. What are you looking at for that interior offensive line? You talked about Gray Zabel. He's obviously a name that, my God, he went from probably a fourth round, estimated pick to a first round pick over the course of this pre-draft process. Who are some of the guys that you think would make sense either at 18 or if they were to trade back, into the low 20s for the
Yeah,
Seahawks?
so it's funny because coming out of that draft, it almost seemed like total vindication for John Schneider. Like they didn't take the interior offensive lineman in the first round. They got one later on, a guy that we really liked lower in the draft. They're like, well, okay, perfect. You that's why you're the GM and we're the guy who's just sounding off on a microphone, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you sort of saw during the season, there's a reason that sometimes these guys are projected in the first round, sometimes they're projected a lot lower. And even if you like the guy, the chances are he's not at that same caliber. So it's funny because you're left with the same position where like at some point you just need to say, look, this is our Achilles heel on the roster right now. And even though it might not be optimal draft strategy, like at some point it's just too obvious a gap to pass up, even if it isn't optimal draft, allocation of resource, et cetera. So yeah, look, I think Gray Zabel would make a lot of sense for them. I think he could go that high. I think everything we've seen from him so far would justify it. I think that does make a lot of sense. I'm really interested in Donovan Jackson, the Ohio State offensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
He's so many of the people in this year's draft are like all the tackles being talked about as guards, right? Will Campbell might be a guard. Kelvin Banks might be a guard. Even Membu is being talked about as a guard. Donovan Jackson is the one guy that might be going the other way, where he was guard at Ohio State, but had to kick out to play tackle when Simmons went down. And number one, did really well there. And number two, at the combine and stuff, you're watching him do drills and he's moving better than the offensive tackles. So Donovan Jackson, I think, would be a really interesting guy to draft as a guard, but gives you that flexibility that you could kick him out if needs be. I think he would make a ton of sense. Tyler Booker from Alabama is a different type of player. Like he's sliding at the moment. His combine was pretty rough. His measurables were pretty awful. I don't know how much it matters. Like for certain schemes, sure. But for anybody that's going to run, some gap scheme, anyone that doesn't run like pure outside zone all the time, I think he's fine. Like I don't think he's going to operate in a phone booth. Like he's a power player. Anything that's going to have him out in a ton of space consistently, that might be a problem. But anything else, I think he's still worthy of a first round pick. And then, any of those offensive tackles that you do like as guards, like Kelvin Banks draft stock, I think is a difficult one to pin down at the moment. I've seen him sliding in a couple of mock drafts recently. And if he slides into that kind of range, grabbing a Kelvin Banks and having him play guard, I think would be a good move.
Knowing that the Seahawks have hired Clint Kubiak, they are going to, he talked about being an outside zone team. They're going to have a fullback. They're going to do that whole deal. If you had the pick of those four, let's say Kelvin Banks, Tyler Booker, Gray Zabel, and Donovan Jackson, and you're sitting there at 18, no one wants to trade up, so you're stuck there. Which of those guys do you feel best about for what the Seahawks are probably going to trade?
I think I feel best about Gray Zabel. I mean, I really think he's going to be a really good offensive lineman. Those North Dakota State offensive linemen have got a pretty good track record recently of producing in the NFL. And what he showed at the Senior Bowl, I think, was so impressive. Like, Senior Bowl isn't everything, but I think if you're able to consistently dominate for the entire week, just crush people, that's their signal in that, particularly if you're doing it at a new position, 3 new positions, because they weren't giving him time to settle at any one of them. And that was a good defensive line group. Like, the Senior Bowl every year, it's sort of hit and miss depending on the position group you're looking at. This was a really strong defensive line group, particularly on the interior as well. And Gray Zabel not just held up, but dominated consistently. So it's been a huge rise for him in the pre-draft process, but I don't think like middle of the first round is an unreasonable place for him to go. I don't see a reason why he doesn't project in the same kind of range as a guy like Graham Barton, that the Bucs drafted. Again, college, different position, projected him inside a center. I think the same thing can be true for Zabel.
Is there any player that realistically could slip to 18 that is not an offensive lineman, you'd be like, man, I get it. The Seahawks just got to get him. I'll give you some possibilities like Shamar Stewart, combine but he has low production, so he could be a top 10 pick. He could slip all the way into the 20s. Nick Emenwari, safety, had crazy production, first team All-Pro, or first team All-American, as well as a crazy combine. We know what Mike McDonald's done with Kyle Hamilton and safeties in the past. Jahad Campbell's another name that, they've got Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight at the middle, but Jahad Campbell looks like it could be a monster at the inside linebacker position. We know what Mike McDonald's done with that. Any of those guys or any other player where you'd say, you know what, John Schneider, I get it. You got to get that blue chip potential instead of just getting the best offensive lineman.
You can kind of make that argument for basically any of the edge rushers because it's such a weird class where I think there's a ton of talent, but there's an unusual volume of red flags or question marks for almost all of them. I mean, even Abdul Carter, who's being talked about as maybe the best player in the draft and a guy that could go number one overall, he's got 1 year of playing that position. I mean, he was a linebacker before this. He sort of made the Micah Parsons transition, but before he got to the NFL. So even Abdul Carter is working off like 1 season of sample size at the position that he projects at the next level. And then you get to, Jalen Walker from Georgia. It was a legitimate true hybrid player, linebacker / edge rusher, who's sort of 6'2", 245. So he's undersized for an edge rusher position and working on a crazy small sample size because of being not a full-time player for most of his career and, playing 2 different positions. So he could easily go in the top 10, or he could slide to the bottom of the first round because it's so much projection involved. Mike Green posting crazy 3-cone times at his pro day, probably has the best tape of any of these guys, but he did it at Marshall. And I think there's some off-field concerns for him. James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee, like you can construct a case that he should be a top 10 player as well, and had a crazy combine, but doesn't always finish plays. And again, seems to be some off-field concerns for him. Shamar Stewart, who you talked about, crazy athletic, crazy, physical tools, but hasn't been particularly productive at all. That's always a concern for these guys. And then Michael Williams from Georgia as well, coming off a bad year because he was playing hurt. Didn't post the kind of crazy workout numbers that people were expecting him to, was both lighter and slower than he was sort of supposed to be. So I think all of these guys, you could easily talk yourself into, well, if you think he's a top 10 draft pick and he slides to you because of, the off-field stuff or the sample size concerns or the hybrid concerns, the size, whatever it is. If you believe that guy's a top 10 draft pick, I wouldn't hate. I think, at some point, Seattle just needs to say, look, there's one massive glaring weakness on this roster. We probably need to fill it regardless of the value that's on the board. But, if they drafted any one of those players and then that was their argument after the fact, it would get it. It would make sense to me.
Yeah. We're talking to Sam Monson of the third team for a little bit longer. Sam, I think every year the draft, it's hard because it's all relative, right? The players available are the players that are available, and you're going to pick someone at number 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. But number 1 in this year is not equivalent to number 1 of any other year, right? It's always a different class. Feels to me like if you really step back and you look at this, I'm not sure that there's many players that would have been top 10 picks last year that are even available this year. Travis Hunter, I think, probably is a top 10 pick in any draft class. I'm not sure about Abdul Carter, probably, but maybe not if you look at some of the picks that were made. Where do you feel like the strength is of this draft class where, teams are going to come out of this with some high quality players?
I think there's a lot of depth. I think you're right. Like it's not a draft stuffed full of star power. The blue chips that people talk about. I don't think there's as many of those as there have been in the last couple of drafts, but the depth I think is really good, particularly in a few different positions. And the positions where there is like legitimate star power, it's non-valuable positions, those traditional non-valuable positions. So like Ashton Genty, you can make a case that Genty's the best running back prospect to come along since Adrian Peterson, right? Bijan Robinson would have been up there, but I think you can make the argument that guys like Adrian Peterson, Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Ashton Genty, you can make a case that Genty belongs right up there with any of those guys. So that's a top 10 draft pick, but it's a running back. I think you can make the case that Colson Loveland, Tyler Warren, the two tight ends, they're not Brock Bowers, but they're right there behind him. They're in that kind of category. They're genuine blue chip tight end prospects, but blue chip tight ends are not generally top 10 players. But then I think the defensive line depth is really good this year relative to previous years. The running back class as a whole is incredibly good. The tight end class as a whole is incredibly good. The wide receiver group is a bit maligned because it doesn't have those three guys that should go in the top 10. And you've got Travis Hunter, who nobody knows what he is yet, right? So that
right.
Because he's this two-way player, and I think you can make an argument that Travis Hunter is both the best wide receiver in this draft and the best cornerback in this draft, and maybe the best at the same time, which is utterly insane. But because he's this sort of weird, unique player, people tend to kind of put a pin in him and put him to the side. And if you do that, suddenly the wide receiver group at the top doesn't look great because it's McMillan. I think a lot of people don't quite love him as much as, previously they thought they would. Luther Burden is sliding after a rough season last year. Matthew Golden is this strange player on the rise, in part because of that 40 time, which may or may not be fake, the 4.29. But I think generally the strength of the wide receiver group is really good. It's just not in the blue chip area. There's no, Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, Marvin Harrison Jr., but like the next 15 players, I think, are every bit as strong as they were a year ago.
One of the positions that you didn't mention when we were talking about, okay, if they don't take an offensive lineman in the first round, who are some names that would make some sense? You didn't mention a quarterback. And the Seahawks made a big move. They traded Geno Smith. They signed Sam Darnold, who's obviously younger and has the potential to be their starter for a little while longer if they want him to be, and if he earns that. Are there any quarterbacks, let's throw out Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, who now seem locked in the high part of the draft. Are there any quarterbacks that you think if the Seahawks called their name at 18, you'd say, okay, that makes sense to me?
I mean, Jackson Dart is the only name I think that could even be in that conversation. I would be utterly staggered if any other quarterback other than those three, the two big guys that we expect to go in the top 10, and then Jackson Dart. If any other quarterback is picked in the first round, my mind would be fairly blown by this draft. I think I would get selecting Jackson Dart because, the Darnold thing is, it's a plan that could work out. It's kind of a hedge. They probably do still need a long-term succession plan, or at least a contingency plan in case Darnold is the player that he was in the last 2 games of the season instead of the guy that he was the first 15 games of the season. So I would kind of get that, but it would be, again, like Seattle went into this offseason with one massive hole on the roster, the interior of the offensive line, which is the same hole they had this time a year ago, and all the way through the season, it's been the big weakness for the entire team for like at least a year, for the entire time you've been going live every single day. And they haven't fixed it yet. And they still haven't fixed it. And in the meantime, they created extra holes, right? They created a new hole at quarterback by trading away Geno Smith, and a new hole at receiver by trading away DK Metcalf. And you can argue the kind of merits of those things, right? The contract situations and how long were they going to be here for, and all those kinds of things. And that's fine, but you still need to fix the thing that was broken in the first place. Like the weakness has not gone away yet. And now you've put, free agency it's not done, but the number of those players that are potential fixes are dwindling. And we're sort of focusing on the draft now as the next opportunity to fix that. And if you then take that first round draft pick again and go, well, let's draft the succession plan at quarterback, we're like, well, okay, but Darnold is still working behind this offensive line that looks like a problem right now. And if you say, well, okay, that's why Darnold's not going to work out. Well, now we turn the keys over to Jackson Dart. It's like, but again, you still haven't fixed the line. Like at some point that needs to be repaired if any of these quarterbacks are going to work out. So, I don't think it's ever crazy to fix your sights on a quarterback, say, we believe this guy can be, a top 10 quarterback for the next 10 years, because that fixes a lot of things on a team, right? Almost everything. But at some point, you actually need to repair the biggest weakness of this roster. Where, look, Darnold showed last year that the level of play he can attain if he's in a good situation is Pro Bowl / all pro caliber level, right? But he's also shown he can't do that behind a line that's just going to fall apart. So I would get selecting Dart. I wouldn't do it personally. I don't think he's sort of worth that spot. And I don't want to say he's Kenny Pickett, but he's sort of in the Kenny Pickett bucket of I would only make that pick in the first round if I would put myself in a position where I needed to make that pick in the first round. You know, I wouldn't go out of my way to select Jackson Dart in the first round. I would take him if I wound up going into the first round without a quarterback yet, the way the Steelers did with Kenny Pickett. So I think you can make the argument, but I just think it's not where they should be going.
Yeah, I remember watching Jackson Dart, watching all the quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl, and just being not impressed with pretty much any of them. Jalen Milroe wasn't impressed; was very unimpressive. Dylan Gabriel, who I thought would look the best of the bunch just because he's got a bunch of experience, I didn't think he looked that great. I thought Tyler Shuck was maybe the best of the guys that was there, but it wasn't like it was a huge show he put on. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe John Schneider is seeing, the celestial black hole and wants to see if he can actually create a hole that lasts just as long. Because it's been more than a decade of the Seahawks offensive line having a big hole in the middle. Sam, last thing I want to talk to you about before I let you go. You mentioned all these changes that the Seahawks have made, moving on from Geno, moving on from DK Metcalf, signing Cooper Kupp, signing DeMarcus Lawrence, obviously signing Sam Darnold. What do you make of what's going on with Seattle right now?
I mean, I kind of buy the party line, that John Schneider's been putting out, that like these guys didn't want to sign the contract that we wanted to give them. They kind of wanted out, and we only want players here that want to be here. I sort of buy that. Now that kind of leaves out how much of that was, how much of that is you like creating that situation. Like, could you have given them a contract that would work for them long term and would work for you long term? I think you can definitely make that case. The Geno Smith thing, like I kind of get the idea of, look, he's a quarterback with a certain level and a very frustrating Achilles heel. Like he melts down in the red zone. And I think it's happened consistently enough now that we can kind of label that as his problem. He's a very good quarterback in the NFL. And I think given the offensive line in front of him, he's probably better than people give him credit for as well. Like you saw how bad that offensive line was in the interior the second Sam Howell came in, right? Sam Howell's a guy that's played borderline solid football in the NFL. He came in and couldn't handle that whatsoever. Like, it's all of a sudden you got an idea of just how bad that line was in front of Geno Smith, and he was making it work almost all the time. But he gets to the red zone and he kind of falls apart a bit. That's definitely a weakness. So I kind of get the idea of saying, look, he's good, not great. He's in the Kirk Cousins bucket. There's a financial level at which you should pay those guys, beyond which they cease to become, surplus value. And now you're just at a disadvantage relative to genuinely elite quarterbacks. So I kind of get drawing a financial line in the sand and saying, no more than this. If you want more than this, it's going to have to be somewhere else. The way they did it was a little weird, where it's like you trade him away with no actual replacement. Like, that's happened before, right? Like the Vikings have reached the end of the Kirk Cousins thing, and various other teams have sort of put a stop to good, not great, and decided they want a different solution. Almost all of them have had a very obvious pathway to the next guy, though. Like, they've been in position to draft the next guy. They've already got the next guy in the roster, whatever it is. The Seahawks traded him away, and then we're like, well, now we have to get Sam Darnold, which is a little strange. Okay, they ultimately ended up doing it, but that doesn't feel like outstanding process to me, to sort of, to really put yourself out there and then be like, now we actually have to get Darnold, otherwise we're in real trouble. The Metcalf thing, I think you can make that argument that you could trade him away given with the kind of money that he wanted. I think that's a reasonable decision to make as well. Again, though, it creates a roster hole that wasn't there before. And Cooper Kupp will maybe go some way towards repairing that. But, man, Cooper Kupp looks a diminished version of himself these days. So I think they need work to do still on the receiver group, and the draft is a good place to do it. But, I think you can defend either one of the decisions, but you start pairing them together. Again, on top of the fact that they still haven't addressed what I would have said is the one real weakness of this roster heading into the offseason. It's sort of, it doesn't feel like they've gotten better yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Seahawks, I think John Schneider, Mike McDonald would say, hey, we're bringing back a defense that finished top 10 last year and should be even better this year. And we've got an offensive play caller that actually knows what to do in the NFL and a scheme that's worked, and a whole offensive line group and coaching staff that's been together and knows how to coach it, and an offensive scheme and outside zone that has been known to kind of mask some bad offensive line play over the years. And that's kind of their plan. Now, to your point, if you go player by player, it's hard to say that the Seahawks are clearly better than they were a year ago. In fact, it's probably much easier to make the case that they are worse than they were a year ago. So this draft, where they have 5 picks in the top 92, is going to be pivotal. Sam, thank you so much for coming on. Tell folks what they can expect from you and Steve over on 33rd Team.
Yeah, we're full into draft season now, so we do a mock draft of some kind every Monday, whether we're reacting to somebody else's, whether we're doing our own, and then now we're kicking off the position rankings. So tomorrow, Wednesday, will be quarterbacks, receivers on Thursday. So yeah, Check the Mic is the show, either on YouTube or podcast land, and it's all draft season all the time now.
It's one of the ones I listen to, so make sure you check it out. Sam, thanks so much. You can be at the owners meeting this weekend.
No, I will not be at the owners meeting.
All right. Well, next time I will see you. We will hang out. It's good to have you here, and send my best to Steve.
Sounds good. Take it easy.
All right. That is Sam Monson of the 33rd Team. Make sure you Check the Mic. I will tell you, Steve Palazzolo is massive, man. That guy is so big. As a guy that is, 5'9", probably below that now. I've probably started shrinking in my old age, but man, Steve Palazzolo, big man. So we are 90 minutes in to episode 365 of Hawk Blogger Mornings. We've already given away a bunch of stuff from Pagliacci Pizza. Over, I think, $250 worth of gift cards will be given away already. We have also shared the link, and I'll share it again, to the Hawk Blogger merch store. And you can go to hawkblogger.com anytime you want. There is a link for HB merch, and there's multiple different stores there. You can get the Hawk Blogger Mornings logo on things. You can get the HB logo. You can get the Real Hawk Talk logo. Honestly, I think the Real Hawk Talk logo is the best stuff. This is a shirt with the Real Hawk Talk logo on it that you can see. I've got the lightweight hoodie, is awesome. What I was going to say, I think earlier before I got sidetracked, is Hawk Blogger Mornings logo, like they're missing the white t-shirt, I guess, or out of stock. So that logo on any other color looks really bad. But you can check it out. I've lowered the prices as much as I'm able to, and I think Redbubble is also doing a special 25% off last time I checked. So you can get some really good deals on merch if you wanted to do that to celebrate 365. Also, wanted to give you a chance to win some JK Boots merch. So we talked about this before, and it's time to actually do it now. If you can answer how many people watched Hawk Blogger Mornings over the last 365 days, you either answer that in chat, or you answer how many times, how many video views were there in the last 365 days. Put that in chat. And then the first 20 people who live in the United States, the continental United States, you got to be in the continental United States for us to be able to ship this merch out to you. The first 20 people that get that question correct and go to the link I am now putting in chat. First 20 people that sign up there will get either a JK Boots leather wallet, a JK Boots hat that will look probably something like this, a JK Boots hoodie, or a JK Boots t-shirt. So we're going to give away 20 of those things And you got to be in the continental United States. You got to get the answer correct. You got to be one of the first 20 people to respond, and then we'll give that away. Part of the reason we're able to do that is we've had just a fantastic partnership with JK Boots. If you use code HawkBlogger right now, you go to JK Boots, they will give you $75 off. They will give you $75 off your purchase on the site. And we're going to give away $15 for every purchase to the Wildland Firefighters Foundation. So really, really great deal, and really awesome partnership that we've had with JK Boots. That's a local Washington-based company. So love that. They're in Spokane, and take advantage while you still can. All right, so now we've got a bunch of super chats to get to. So let's go ahead and start working our way through super chats. We will start with Old School Seahawk, who has given away $12.12. Love that. Says, thank you for an amazing year. Well, thank you, Old School, for everything you've done. Been an amazing supporter of the show. Corey Hickok says, happy anniversary, HB Mornings. Brian, thanks for all your hard work over the past year of content. Here's to many more. Well, thank you very much, Corey. Really appreciate you, man. Amy Holmes, who is our Do Everything supporter, on the admin on the Discord channel. She's all over on chat. She's a moderator here. She says, stupid Apple can't get a good number. Happy HBAM anniversary, Brian. Too slammed to get a voicemail in, but we appreciate you. Well, I totally appreciate you, Amy. Thanks for everything you've done for me and the show this year. Mr. Puppy has gifted 10 Hawkblogger memberships, and special thanks to Detail Oriented, who really kicked off the whole gifting of memberships thing and has resulted in, literally like thousands of memberships being given away over the last year. If you want to get one of these free memberships, you got to look how to turn on gifting on your YouTube account. Just do a quick Google search. You'll figure out how to do it. And then all you got to do is like, subscribe, join the show, watch the show, and YouTube will give you a free membership. They're floating around just waiting to be given out to people that have gifting turned on and engage with the show. So thank you to Mr. Puppy for giving those away. Old School Seahawk back again. Appreciate all the hard work. Thank you again, Old School. Joe Z with a super thanks there. Appreciate you, Joe. Corey Coleman, congrats on episode 365 and all your hard work, Brian. Well, Corey, thank you. Appreciate you, big guy. Brian Masterson, congrats on a full year of Hawkblogger Mornings. Thank you for keeping it going. You are most welcome. HBAM, I'm going to probably start using that more often as a shorthand, but Hawkblogger Mornings been a lot of fun. Plenipote, good to see you. Plenipote says, congrats, Brian. Thanks for keeping this Texas boy up to date on all things Seahawks. You got it, man. I'm sure you got a lot more of me than you expected when DeMarcus Lawrence said what he said about the Cowboys last week. Christian Fuerte has been a member for 7 months, which is awesome. Says, 1 year, congrats. This community is the best. It is. I think the community is one of the things that makes this place really, really special. Thank you so much, Christian, for being a member. Antoine Lamontagne from Canada says, thanks for the great content. Been listening since training camp last year. Cheers from Quebec in Canada. Well, cheers for you, Antoine. Thank you for the super chat. Thanks for listening to the show. Matt McManus, who got the first pair of custom themed Seahawks themed boots from JK Boots, says, good for you, Brian. We appreciate your time and insight every time you decide to share it with us. Well, that's very nice of you. Appreciate you, Matt. Detail Oriented, the aforementioned Detail Oriented, been a member for 10 months, says, Brian, been a pleasure to support you. You're appreciated more than I can express in words. I don't say this lightly, but your channel, in my humble opinion, is the absolute best Seahawks channel on YouTube. Here's to your continued success. Man, that is very nice. There's some really great content creators out there. I don't like talking about myself as a content creator, but realistically, I think about myself as a Seahawks reporter, but I am a content creator too. So thank you for that. And there's a lot of great people doing it. Josh Dahuman with a super chat says, congrats on a year. So great that you've been able to accomplish this great feat. Go Hawks. Thanks, man. I appreciate you. Seahawks fan Jim with a super thanks. Appreciate that, man. Super Sauce XL has been a member for 11 months. Unbelievable. Not quite all 365, but been a blast listening in. Well, I remember folks like Hawks fan Matt Man, who, man, he was with us for almost every show for the beginning. Did not miss an episode. That was really cool to see. And I know a lot of you have been there since the beginning. Logan Hamlin, member for 6 months. Been a great few years following your content. And the last year in particular has been awesome. Thanks for everything you do for this fandom. That's really nice of you, Logan. And I'm having fun. So I appreciate you guys enjoying it along with me. Plenipote, again, member for 11 months, says go Hawks. Absolutely, go Hawks. Big off season for this team, as always. Larry O'Keefe, been a member for 6 months, says fantastic job, Brian. Best Seahawks coverage. That is an amazing thing to say, and thank you for saying it. That's nice of you. Hawks fan Matt Man, who I mentioned earlier, congrats on 365. Here's to 730. Yeah, we will see. I will probably not have a 730 episode like I'm having a 365 episode. As I mentioned, I'm not going to probably keep numbering the episodes, at least for these videos. It's just going to be Hawk Blogger Mornings every single day that I can do it. But really wanted to get to 365 as a... There's not many things that I think I've done in my life, 365 straight days. You know, I can't even say I've eaten 365 straight days in a row. So this is special. It's been cool, and you know, it's been a real commitment to get there, and I'm enjoying celebrating it with all of you. Old school back again. Grateful for HB and the whole HB community. That is nice of you, Lucas Grand. He gives away 10 Hawk Blogger memberships. That's another 10 out there. If you get one of these, consider upgrading to a club level member or a suite level member. That will get you access to the Discord channel where the conversation just keeps going on. So appreciate this from Lucas, and hope you guys take advantage of the chance to upgrade. Brent Yo Endo says, thanks for explaining the ins and outs of things. I'm a very casual football watcher, still not sure what the fullback is. I hope a bird team wins it all. Well, Brent, that's very cool. I think that generally the people that watch this show are pretty hardcore Seahawks fans. And so I actually am really happy to hear when there's folks that are more casual that tune in. I tried my best to kind of keep things where anybody could follow along. I know my mom listens to this show, and my dad at times listens to the show. And so, you know, I try to keep everybody included in what we're doing here. But yeah, I think it's great to have some casual folks in here. Just want to be part of the community and maybe learn a little bit more about football and the Seahawks. Bryce Coots, who has been unbelievably generous of late, says, a really nice super chat, says, congratulations, Brian, on 365 Hawk Blogger Mornings. Can't wait till the next 365. You're an inspiration for me and my Seahawks content. Keep up the amazing work and standards that you have set. That is really nice. Bryce does his own. He has another podcast. Check out Bryce's channel and check out what they do. They do great work over there. Bryce has also gifted 10 Hawk Blogger memberships. He's given away hundreds, I think, at this point. Really appreciate how generous Bryce has been with those. Chris Clark, a frequent super chatter, says, congratulations. It's been an interesting year. Thank you for all the great content. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you. And there's Italian Knight dropping 50 free Hawk Blogger memberships. Unbelievable. Italian Knight, he just does these huge giveaways, and really appreciate that, and has brought a lot of people into the community. That's great. Matt McManus back again, says, are Sam and Steve going to the game in Ireland? That would have been a good question to ask. I will follow up with Sam and we'll find out. I wouldn't be surprised, for sure. There's a chance the Seahawks could be in that game. I would not. The Steelers and Seahawks have a game together, and the Steelers are going to be the ones hosting, I think. So who knows? We will see. John Hurlbut, old friend who left a voicemail. I didn't have a chance to play it, but I did hear it, John, and I really appreciated it from you. We used to work together back in the old days when I was at Adobe. And now John is a real estate agent. He's been a sponsor for the show in the past. And here he is giving away 20 Hawk Blogger memberships. Really appreciate you, John. And thanks for gifting these memberships. He's back with a super chat. Says, happy anniversary, Brian. Thanks for creating the best Seahawks community on the planet. Appreciate all you do. Well, I appreciate you too, John. And I know everyone that was on the Slack channel that moved over to the Discord channel, that was a little bit of an issue or a little bit of work to do, and appreciate everyone that's come over and made the Discord channel just hopping, right from the get-go. Gingerbread Man, give us 10 Tez Johnson in any round. Dude burns on streaks in college football 25. Well, I don't know. Tez Johnson, he really needed to have better testing numbers than he did at his weight, 155 pounds, not great. So we'll see how he does in the draft. I think he could be one of those guys that you're really happy you wind up with, but I don't think it's going to be day one, and I don't think it's going to be day two that Tez Johnson is drafted. So you might be able to get him late. Tim Sully, been watching, listening to your content for years and the last 365 straight. Congrats on the 1 year mark. Go Hawks. Well, thank you, Tim. I appreciate you, man. Look who it is. Nathan Ernst. He's gifted 10 Hawk Blogger memberships. What a guy. You know, this is a guy that came all the way out to the combine, joined me out there, hung out. We had so much fun. Dano Gorman was there as well. I think we're going to try to bring a lot of the crew next year to the combine, and really, really appreciate Nathan Ernst. And one of the things I appreciate about Nathan is he and I see the game of football differently. We have different perspectives. We have different, pig-headed perspectives on things. And I've tried over the years to make sure that we don't just have a groupthink of collective perspective where everyone feels the same thing. And so Nathan is a key part of that. Derek Gebby is a part of that. Jeff, Nathan, Dana, everyone's got their own points of view, and I really appreciate it. It's very nice that Nathan took the time to gift away these memberships. Thanks, Nathan. Old School Seahawk says, thanks for the contributions from the Hawk Blogger crew. That is Nathan right there. Seahawkers Podcast. Well, hey, Seahawkers Podcast says 365 straight days. Incredible. Go Hawks, man. Well, Seahawkers are a great crew to make sure you all check out. They do stuff on the road. It's obviously the booster club for the team. They got them all over the world. So make sure you check out the Seahawkers if you haven't already. And thank you so much for the super chat, guys. That's really cool. Old School Seahawk says, I guess I'm just spamming chat. Sorry about that. You are not spamming chat. That is nice of you, man. Appreciate you. Kane Must, been a member for 8 months, says, way to keep it going for a full year, Brian. Well, thank you, Kane, for being a member for 8 months. That is no joke. Old School gives 10 Hawk Blogger memberships plus 2 more. He always does 12. And I appreciate Old School for giving away 12 Hawk Blogger memberships. Noah Berman, who's been a member for 12 months. All 12 months. Love it, dude. Huge thank you to you and your wife for all the work you have put in over the last year. Hope you take some well-deserved time off. Go Hawks. Thank you, man. That is nice of you. Mr. Backlib, I have no idea. APACLEB. Congrats, Brian. Appreciate your passion and have enjoyed listening in. Well, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate you. Dogzilla Monster. Thanks for everything, including for sharing the combine experience with you all, with us all. That was fun. I enjoyed doing that, and we'll definitely continue to try to. When I go on the road this weekend, I think I'm leaving Sunday. I will tell you about that experience at the owners meeting. You heard from Mike Sando. It's definitely a different vibe. It's new for me, so we'll see how that goes. Bryce Coots gives away another 10 Hawk Blogger memberships. Very cool of him. And then finally, Cindy Shell, who is so amazingly supportive and has done all sorts of stuff for the show and the channel, says, happy 365. Just want to encourage Hawk Blogger Morning fans to upgrade to club level member or join Patreon. There is a great group on Discord and no 49er trolls or bots. She is right about that. We've got an amazing group over on Discord, and highly recommend either go to patreon.com/hawkblogger or go to upgrade your membership to club level or suite level on YouTube. Folks, that'll do it for episode 365. Nearly 2 hours in. It's still a little foggy, but I think it's going to burn off, and I've got plans to hit the golf course later today to celebrate with a colleague, and going to do that. Hopefully you enjoyed this show. I will get this posted on the audio version soon. Just a reminder, especially if you get the show on YouTube, you will start seeing duplicates of this show. You see the video version, which you get now, and then you're going to see an audio version that'll pop up a little bit later, and it'll just have the Hawk Blogger Mornings logo. That is how audio podcasts work on YouTube Music. It's a little bit annoying, but it's how it works. So just know that they are the same show. It's not a new show that's coming out, but I'll help people get to know about that. If you listen to this show on whatever place you get your audio podcast, please give a 5-star review, especially Apple Podcast. For whatever reason, that's been around for a very long time. We have a little bit of a lower rating. I think it's like 4.1. Would love to get that closer to 5 and could use all your help. Take a moment in Apple Podcast to give it a 5-star review. Same on Spotify, where we're much stronger as it is. So appreciate everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This has been an unbelievable 365 days. Keep an eye out. I'm going to be publishing a story either later today or tomorrow, kind of giving you a behind the scenes of what it's been like going through this and kind of the journey of a second career for me, kind of midlife. And I think that's something that a lot of people have been kind of curious about. So I wanted to share that as well. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to my crew. Thanks to all of you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. This has been episode 365 of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care, y'all.